I struggled with the notion of control and asking myself, do you need control? Or is it the fact that there's a basic difference in philosophy? If my partner had done the things that he'd committed to do when we started the partnership, if he continued to sell, things would have been fine. So the fact that I didn't have 100% control wasn't an issue. Honestly, I never really considered or never really thought about the phrase outgrew, but that's a great description of what happened. We simply outgrew him.
Hey, what's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk here with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass podcast for those agency owners that want to grow and scale faster. And on today's episode, I have a great agency owner where we're going to talk about having the guts to have that hard conversation with your partner where the agency has outgrown them. And what do you need to do? I know I've gone through this many times. And one time when I sold the agency, I didn't have the guts to, kind of say, hey, we should kind of split ways or I should buy you out. So what are the different options? Welcome to the show, Rob.
Hey, thanks, Jason.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. So tell us who you are and what you do.
My name is Rob Rosasco, and I am the founder of Too Darn Loud Digital Marketing. We're a boutique digital marketing agency that focuses specifically on helping law firms grow their business.
Let's kind of just jump right into it. I kind of like jumping into it rather than kind of beating around the bush because everyone listening is like, all right, look, I got a business partner. Why did you start with a business partner? I think that's a good place to start.
It is a good place to start. And it's a question I've asked myself a number of times over the past 10 years.
Why the hell did we get this guy?
Exactly. The reason I did it was because I was afraid to do it by myself, quite honestly. It was daunting. I'd worked for a much larger company, again, in the legal marketing space for about 8 years. So it was sort of a natural transition to go from a large company focusing on legal marketing to my own agency focusing on legal marketing. But the scary part was taking that first step, starting. I had nothing other than my Rolodex, virtually speaking, electronically speaking. I am dating myself because I did at one time actually have a Rolodex. But other than my Rolodex and the contacts I had made over the course of 8 years, we had nothing. We had no back office support. We had, I couldn't build a website. We couldn't perform SEO for a website. I didn't write legal content.
What was your expertise? What were their expertise?
My expertise, well, actually, and unfortunately, my expertise and my partner's expertise, we were both sales guys. So I was eager to, start knocking on doors and making phone calls and getting in front of attorneys to build the business. But we had to go out and find a third party to help us build a back end. And honestly, I just didn't want to do it by myself. Well, and I knew that building the business outside of getting clients, building the business, opening a business checking account, finding a merchant services vendor, was going to be a challenge. So having a partner would allow me to build the business, to create the business, and the partner to go out and sell. And that was our agreement in the beginning, was he was going to be solely responsible for selling. I was going to create a business from nothing. And it worked. It worked for several years. He was, he was very good. I don't know if you're a Jerry Maguire fan, but
show me the money.
Exactly. Jerry Maguire said he was the best in the living room. And my partner was, the best in the conference room. He was a relationship builder, and he did a wonderful job in the first couple of years of bringing on clients. And I took care of the rest. I built relationships, created partnerships with certain vendors so we could build websites and support them. And it worked for a couple of years. But a point that you made, I think perhaps before you hit record, was I outgrew him. and quite honestly, the business outgrew him. He had, he was comfortable at a certain point in terms of the growth of the business, and I wasn't. I wanted to continue to grow. So after, I would say probably 3 years, we started to walk different paths until finally 7.5 years in, I said, and along the way, during that 4-year period, and from 3 to 7 years, I had, heart to hearts. I had serious conversations with him about my expectations and what I wanted to do, how my vision for the business. And he, in the moment, concurred. That was his vision as well, but it wasn't.
How, when you guys first started, how did you guys set the agency up? Was it a partnership? Was it 50-50? Did you have an operating agreement, or just, hey, like spit on your hand, give the handshake, right? I mean, you might as well go back to that since you brought up Rolodex.
Yeah. Trust me, there would be many sales contracts that I wrote on a bar napkin. So again, yeah, a little spit and a handshake. But no, we had an operating agreement. But sadly, in this case, me, to sever the partnership because of dissatisfaction with the other's contribution.
So what would you have changed? Like, knowing what you know now, we're going to say we're going to do the partnership, but what would you have changed in the expectations setting up the agency, as well as in the operating agreement?
In the operating agreement, I would have consulted with an attorney. I don't know exactly how this language would have been written, how it would have been drafted, but I absolutely would have had language in our operating agreement that would allow for one partner to buy the other out, or to sever the relationship because of a difference in philosophies in terms of the future of the business. But I would have somehow incorporated the language in the operating agreement which would have accommodated that sort of breakup. And we simply didn't have it.
After I started this business, I went into a business doing a secondary business, supporting agencies where we would, well, I don't want to go into too much detail because a lot of people know probably who it is. Obviously, the business didn't work, and I saw some kind of red flags from this gentleman, or it could be a lady. I don't know. I'll throw you guys off. But I saw some red flags of just them getting completely crazy. But before we formed the company, I basically had a clause in there that it was kind of almost like, I'm trying to think of the term it was. I'll just kind of explain what it was. And you tell me what you think of this, Rob, if this would have helped. If I wanted this person, if I wanted out, I could either buy them out or they could buy me out. So if I said, hey, I want to execute this clause, and I value the agency at, or whatever this business was, I value it at 100,000. And let's say I lowball the crap out of them.
Right.
And I'll say, I'm going to give you 100 grand. He could automatically turn it around and say, nope, you offer me 100K, I'll buy you for 100K. So you had to give a fair price if the other one wanted out.
Right.
What do you think of that?
I think that's excellent. So before you open your big mouth, you need to be prepared to take that for your piece of the company. Yeah, no, that's a great idea.
Yeah. I actually put up with, on the first agency I created the agency in 99. And, we eventually sold in the end of 2011, October 1st, actually. And I put up with, the business, and I outgrew the partner for like 6 or 7 years. I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was like you, when I started the agency, I didn't even know what an invoice was. I mean, like, I didn't know anything. I just knew how to design websites, and I understood people. I think, right? Like, that's the key in that part. And I had to figure out everything else. But for some reason, all of us are like, let's bring someone else in. And you're like, why? Like, you look back and you're like, why? Like, I could have done this and then brought the right team members in, or bring the right kind of advisors around you, or
Yeah.
join the right, community that can actually see the things that we haven't seen, in order to, and then you have the total control. Because I look back and I'm like, man, it was a tough couple of years. And then, and I felt bad because I felt like I could always help my team members out and I could bring them up, but I just couldn't bring this person up. Did you feel that way as well?
Absolutely. I did. And something you said that sort of sparked, clicked with me, and that is, control. Control is important for a lot of reasons, but the struggle I had during, again, that 4-year period, where yours unfortunately was 6 years, but where I was, trying to decide, what am I going to do? How am I going to, extricate myself from this? Um, I struggled with the notion of control, and asking myself, do you need control, or is it the fact that, again, there's a basic difference in philosophy. If my partner had done the things that he'd committed to do when we started the partnership, if he continued to sell, things would have been fine. So the fact that I didn't have 100% control wasn't an issue.
So the values were there and then something changed. Is that
Essentially, yes. Again, and again, I honestly, I never really considered or never really thought about the phrase outgrew, until you shared it with me at the beginning of our conversation. But that's a great description of what happened. We simply outgrew him. We being the company and me.
Yeah. People outgrow different roles all the time. And a lot of times too, like I even tried to go, I was always the leader in the company, not just because of my title. It was because I was actually coaching and leading people. And he had a title, but what I learned later on was he thought the title meant he was the lead, a leader of the people. And it cost me a lot of good team members. Which then cost me a lot of, good clients, and just held us back. So I'm glad. And thanks for kind of sharing, kind of what you would change in the very beginning. So, all right, you guys both decide, all right, it's not working out. Do you close down the company? Like, what was the option? Like, split it, buy them out? What?
All three, those three were, and closing the company wasn't really an option. It's something that we discussed, and that my family and I discussed. Is that something that I wanted to do? And I quickly decided that wasn't an option. That I wasn't interested in closing the company. I enjoyed what I was doing. I really enjoyed, running the company. I enjoyed managing, clients. I enjoyed the work. So closing the company wasn't an option. So then it was, are we going to split it down the middle, or, am I going to buy you out? And both were viable options. Both were considered. But then he decided he didn't want to sell. So really it boiled down to, our only option was to split our customer base down the middle. And we worked on it for probably about 6 months before, signing paperwork and actually, shutting it down. And I really pushed. I really wanted the company as a whole. When we parted ways, again, as I shared with you at the beginning of our conversation, he was supposed to be responsible for sales. I was responsible for everything else. When we parted ways 2+ years ago, about 65% of our customer base was due to my sales efforts. I owned 65% of the base. He owned about 35%. And he had, Jason, zero. He had no administrative responsibilities whatsoever. So again, the phrase, I simply got tired of carrying him. That's where we were.
Mm-hmm.
So it frustrated me a little bit to have to split the base down the middle. But unless I wanted a prolonged fight, and it was one my attorney told me I'd probably lose, I just agreed to, down the middle, and let's move on.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's smart. the best day to kind of part with your partner is 10 years ago or today.
Agreed. Yeah,
It's
no, you're right.
like, and the what I felt when I was going, I was like, well, I already went another year. All right, it's already 4 years. All right, it's
I,
5 years. And it just keeps compounding. And it's like, we're invested. All right, well, and you start getting numb to the situation. Now, for some of you listening, and maybe your partner just pissed you off for a second, like, this is not what we're talking about, right? Like, these are things that have added up that were just kind of an anchor, huge anchor. And I want you all to be thinking about, if you do feel that you're supporting your business partner, I want you to think about, what could you do to help them out? Could you take away some of the stuff that they may not enjoy anymore? Could we do whatever it is? Like, could I get them a course? Can we move them into a role that they'll enjoy more? Because, there's certain levels, like, you have to become the CEO rather than an owner, or maybe they need to become the COO. But what does that look like? Because look, you all started knowing nothing, and you're like, well, let's kind of try it out. So I want you guys to give it the yee-ho or whatever. I don't know what that word is, right? Like, you all get it, right? The
yeah.
yee-ho. What am I looking for? What's the word? It's eluding me.
Heho?
I don't. I
Are
think
you
I just made up
combining
a word.
yeehaw and hee? Yeah, I don't
I don't
know.
know. The old, put it all together. I can't think of it. Oh well.
But I know what you meant. I know what you meant.
I think people do. Give it 100% and try to make it work, because you guys
Yeah,
did start it, and I
correct.
still respect my old business partner that we started. Like, I wouldn't be in the place I would be with all the stuff I know now. Like, I had to go through all that. It's all about, did I need to go through it that long? That's what I want people listening to the podcast to go, all right, what are my options? All right, like, did you guys even think of selling the business?
We did. We did. And we had a couple of people approach us. Again, I'm sure you experienced this many times as an agency owner, but people would approach us all the time.
With the BS offers?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. Correct. But we did. And we had one or two parties that were genuinely interested in, actually gave us decent offers, but we just couldn't agree.
What couldn't you agree on?
Well, we couldn't agree on a dollar amount. My thinking was that I was going to continue to even if we sold the company, I was going to start my own agency and build it from the ground up, regardless. So if I could, get an influx of capital with the sale of our business, I was okay with that. He wasn't. He really wanted the clients, and he wanted to continue to grow from, where he was, what we had accomplished. So he just wasn't in favor of, wasn't in agreement that any of the offers or any of the discussions we had was something he was interested in. So,
Okay.
and Jason, something I feel compelled to say, and I'm sure there may be a lot of agency owners out there that will agree with this. My partner was not a bad guy. And I'm not suggesting that your partner was or was not. He was a decent human being. He was a friend of mine. We just had different perspectives, outlooks in terms of the business as a whole and where we wanted the business to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years. Our business philosophies didn't mesh.
Well, people change over time. I did our business for 12 years. And, I started when I was 22 or 23. So, I mean, jack shit when you're 20.
I know. And you think you know everything.
You're trying to figure out things in your 30s, and then 40s, it's kind of like, all right, let's capitalize on the knowledge I actually know, and continue that in the 50s. So, and I feel always sometimes bad for Kimberly, my wife. Like, I'm like, yeah, when we met, like, I wasn't jumping out of planes or climbing mountains or flying. Like, I was like, she's probably looking at me like, God, I just thought this guy was cool to hang out with. So we all change. They can all be really good. You can find some bad ones. Like, I've had a bad one that I was telling you about. But it's all about, what do you need to do? And I think once you come to kind of that conclusion, it's like, do we sell? Which at the end of the day, like that's always an option. You can sell, but the buyer is going to pick up on it. And they're going to see, oh, one partner's doing all the work. That's probably what they want to sell. And, hey, let's kind of lowball them. Or you can split it down the middle. You could shut it down. You could buy them out. They can buy you out. Then you can restart. I mean, there's tons of options. You just need to make the decision that there needs to be a change and make the change. Anything that you regret?
No, other than allowing it to go on too long. But again, we both you and I have made that point already. But no, not really. We ended the partnership on a good note. Sadly, we're both very busy, so we don't talk all that often. But it's not because of a failing in the relationship.
It's good,
which I'm happy with, and that would have been a regret of mine had we ended on a bad note. But that wasn't the case. So in answer to your question, no, there's not much there's not really anything I regret other than the fact that it just simply went on too long. I wish I'd made the decision or acted on the notion 2 years, 3 years earlier.
What was the effect after the fact? So you guys probably split some clients. Did you guys split the team too?
We did.
How'd you decide who had custody of who?
Well, we just sort of made it work. I had relationships with actually, I probably had better relationships with most of the team. Now thinking back, Jason, I took most of the team. Of the 5 people I have working for me right now, 4 of them were working for the combined, for our partnership. 2 of them actually sort of split time. They were working part-time for him and, a quarter of the time for him, 3/4 of the time for me while we were going through the transition. The clients, and again, this might be a concern of an agency owner out there that's considering this. Thankfully for us, and I don't know what your experience was, our clients made it through the transition successfully. We probably went 6 months-ish, 4 to 6 months before we actually announced it to our clients. I'm sorry, that's not true. We announced it to our clients right away, but it was probably 4 to 6 months before there was actually a split, and there were new bank accounts and new things showing up on customers' credit cards and new invoices and the new branding wasn't really rolled out for a little while.
Did you lose any clients?
No, we didn't. Not one.
Wow.
Not one.
Did you lose any team members?
Nope, not one.
It's fantastic.
Yeah,
one thing,
very lucky.
I want to give all of you listening kind of a gold nugget, especially if you guys ever want to sell the agency. Most people don't know this, and here's what it is. Make sure you have a transferable clause in your agreement that you can sell that client to anyone just by letting them know. Because most agencies, right? Because let's say someone's going through this and you want to go, oh, Jason, I'll sell kind of like what you did. And if you're on a smaller kind of spectrum of an agency, right? Like under 3 million, under 5 million in revenue, it's probably going to be an asset purchase, which means they're buying your contracts, they're buying your employee contracts. So make sure you can do that, because if I come along and I want to buy your agency, I'm going to say, ooh, I like this client, this client, this client, this client. I want you to go to them and say, hey, we're possibly selling. I need you to sign this saying if we are sold, we can transfer the contract over. That's showing your hand of going, hey, I'm selling. If you don't, and then if that big, like let's say, like I had to go to, let's say I had to go to Aflac or Coca-Cola, and they go, hell no, I'm not signing that. Then the deal's done, and then they know you're trying to sell, and then they tell your team, and then your team leaves. So please put that in there. Put that in there now. Check with a lawyer on how that needs to work. But it's I hope all of you do that. Probably only 10% will.
You know what? Yeah, no, but that's actually a really good point, Jason. I that's not in our contract.
Yeah. Well, put it in tomorrow. Best time to do it is 10 years ago or today.
If I take away one nugget from this conversation, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Perfect. Well, this has been a lot of fun, Rob. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in?
No. Again, nothing jumps to mind. No, I appreciate your time, Jason. Enjoyed the conversation.
Definitely. What's the agency website? People can go and check you guys out.
The agency website is toodarnloudmarketing.com.
Awesome. Well, everyone go check them out. Thanks so much, Rob, for coming on the show. And if you guys are listening, I want to appreciate all of you listening. If you guys want to come on the podcast, I'd love to have you on. Now, go to jasonswank.com/podcast guest and just fill out the small application. We'll chat with you and come on and tell us your experience about running your agency. So jasonswank.com/podcast guest. And until next time, have a swank day.